I think we might get one or two more people to join, but let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Um, I'm going to ask everybody to make sure they mute their mics, except for the people participating. We will have a question and answer at the end. We're going to try and keep this to 30 minutes. I'm going to help moderate it and contribute a little bit to it. If for those of you that don't know me, I think everyone knows me. I'm Bob Oliver from the Stout Manufacturing Outreach Center. And we have Terry Whipple, the Executive Director of Juneau County Economic Development Center, and then Ed Johnson, the President of Necal, and Clara Gillette, the owner of Necal in Sparta, Wisconsin, are joining us. And Terry is going to talk to them and have a conversation about how they got through the pandemic and how things are going and what they see for the future. So with that, Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Bob, and welcome everyone. This is our very first, what we're calling a Zoomcast. And what we wanted to do was look at how trends had changed because of the COVID pandemic and the challenges that it brought that are going to be with us for a while, as well as we'll be looking at challenges that we had before the COVID pandemic, but are now coming back to haunt us a little bit, like worker shortages and things like that. And we're going to look at best practices, solutions, what creative things some of our businesses, companies have done. And we're just calling it our post-COVID reflection on business. So again, welcome everyone. It's good to have you here. We're going to be recording this so we can send it out like a podcast and allow other business owners and managers to take a look at this when they do get a chance. So we'll have a different topic each month. And we really encourage you to go ahead in the chat and put your questions, as well as let us know what topics that you would like us to go over in the future. So starting, again, we thank Ed Johnson and Clara Gillette for joining us. Ed, of course, is the president, and Clara is the owner of Necal. And Clara, we're going to start with you. If you can share with us a little bit of the history of Necal, and as well as how many employees you have.
Yeah, thank you, Terry. And I wanted to say really quickly too, thank you for putting this together. As you'll hear, I'm relatively new to being involved with manufacturing in Wisconsin, but it has been challenging, and I think a lot of us haven't had the time to reflect back. And so it's nice that you're doing this for all of us to really be able to look back at lessons learned and move forward together. So brief history of Necal. It has been in business for a little over 40 years. My family, I represent the third generation of ownership for Necal. We specialize in transfer tapes, so pressure sensitive adhesives, and we mostly sell into the automotive industry and then heavy industrial as well. And we have 22 employees currently.
Great, thank you. Ed, do you want to add to that?
Certainly, be happy to do so. We operate much as a job shop, so order to order, and we serve both small manufacturers as well as some very large manufacturers. In some cases, we have OEM direct relationships. But we're all about applying adhesives to liners, so we're a coating company. And as Clara had indicated, we coat pressure-sensitive adhesives. And our outputs then are either these large jumbo rolls or master rolls, as well as cut rolls, tapes, and sheets. And we sell business to business and really largely focus on the industrial segment of manufacturing.
Great. And Ed, we're sitting here in March, and so we've been through this COVID pandemic thing now for a year. And it has had a tremendous effect on many different businesses, depending on what industry that you're in. How has it affected Necal?
Well, I'll tell you, it took the wind out of our sails last March and April and May and June. We saw from a sales perspective, our sales fall 30 to 40% in a very short period of time. And then on top of that, of course, there was the human side of this experience and our employees. I think it took the wind out of all of our sails as well, not knowing what we were really dealing with, good information hard to come by. But we kind of went through a transition as the year went on, 2020, and we got through it as individuals and as a team. But it was, but it's amazing how resilient the employees have been and our business as well, because of some steps that we took prior to COVID, but also during COVID. We've come out of it, I'm going to say, in a better place than where we first landed. And so I'd like to say that we're on par with where we finished last year. So
that's great news. And Clara, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so from an ownership perspective, I only recently moved back to the area at the end of 2019 and was sort of just getting my feet wet of getting involved with Necal when the pandemic hit. So it was definitely a baptism by, manufacturing fire, I guess, this past year to go through. The big thing that I learned watching Necal is just how important it is to try to get to the root cause of whatever issue it is that you're facing. And if you find that you're, pandemic or not, if you find that you're kind of having the same thing come up each week, there's probably something you need to set aside some time to look at. And the importance of that really came through in the spring and summer for us. You might be in crisis mode, but really finding the time to have a deeper conversation and get down to the bottom of things and what needs to happen. And then things become less stressful. You become less reactive and more proactive. So that was a big lesson learned for me over this past year.
Great. Well, thank you, Clara. And Ed, when we went through the pandemic, a lot of things I'm sure changed in your plant, in the manufacturing processes. Could you share some of the things that you did to get you through the pandemic time?
yes, and I would say if you will, the biggest thing, or really looking back upon it, the one thing that really helped us get through this whole period and has changed really our current day outlook too, with regards to where we're at and where we're going, is prior to the pandemic, I was in conversation with Bob Oliver, and we had made the decision, Clara included, to embrace a new way of doing business. And we started on a journey prior to COVID, implementing, first of all, learning and then implementing a business operating system. And it really addressed some of what Clara just shared, and it really brought focus and organizational alignment. And if anything, during COVID, it gave us a reason to focus on the horizon ahead of us versus just dwelling in the current. So that was a very big thing. And then that business operating system changed the way that we organized our business. It changed the way we communicated as a team, and it worked wonderful.
Oh, that's great. And Bob Oliver, if you could, the business operating system. Now, I know we have other companies that are not in manufacturing that are on the line, and also others that will be looking at this podcast later. Can you explain how that is for more than just manufacturers?
Sure. Just a little bit about the BOS system, the business operating system. It looks at 6 components. It starts by looking at the strategy of the company, where are they at, where do they want to go, why are they in business, and how are they going to go about doing that. So it starts off looking at the strategy first. From there, then we go into looking at the human talent. Do they have the right people in the right seat? Do they fit the culture of the business? do they need development plans? One thing we're seeing in a lot of companies is companies need people need more development, especially the new leaders of the organizations. From there, we go into the measurement systems and look at, you know, what are the right measurements. Too many companies are tending to try and measure too much, so we're trying to get them to measure the stuff that really is key to help them be successful. Um, we then look at their systems and processes to make sure that they have good systems and processes. Because, as I always say, if you take a bad process and automate it, what do you get, Ed?
You get a bad process over and over and over
You
again.
get a bad automated process, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then we really help laser focus them on what they want to accomplish, not only on their 5 year, all the way down to their 3 year, 1 year, and then quarterly. And it's a system that they end up running themselves. They just stay laser focused quarter over quarter, and and get more done. I always say and ask companies, would you rather get 20% of 20 things done or 80% of 10 things done? And of course, you want to get 80% of 10 things done because you get 8 instead of 4. So we tend to find companies are trying to work on too many things and maybe not the things that really is going to make them long-term successful. So that's kind of a little bit about the business operating system and how it's helping. Clara, Ed, you have anything to add? I guess I'll add that, it does really help communicate from the top down all the way to the shop floor and then give you feedback all the way back up. So it creates a great communication system. So with that, Ed, Clara, you want to add something? Maybe we start with Clara.
Yes.
Sure, I guess just from an ownership perspective. So, I'm not there for the day-to-day with Necal. I'm out there about once a week, and really we use this system and the meetings that you use for it to kind of keep me in touch with everything that's going on. But that being said, I think going through the process and now with the company doing the process, it's given me as an owner a really good understanding of what are the real steps that we need to put in place for this business to succeed. Whereas before, it would sort of honestly feel a little bit insurmountable. Like, okay, well, we need this kind of investment, or we have all of this that we need to work on, or that. And as you go through it, you realize every company has issues. What does Bob say? If you don't have issues, you're not in business, right? So you shouldn't be scared that you have issues. But what you need is to know that you have a plan of attack to start to face those issues and come up with good solutions to those problems. So that from an ownership perspective, it really gives you a clear map of what this company can do given the right people in the right seats and the right strategies and processes in place. And that what gave me a lot of peace of mind and honestly made me even more excited to be involved in the business. So especially for us, not to get too long-winded, because we were kind of in the middle of this transition from second generation to third generation, it really helped give me the confidence as the next owner to come in and see where I can be of best use for the company to help it grow. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Clara. And Ed, you want to add to that?
Yes, maybe on a personal note, it changed my leadership style from being one of reaction to proactively planning, and really has energized not only myself in terms of the types of things I'm responsible for, but it has re-energized the entire workforce. And like I said, we've gone from reacting to proactively planning and executing against a plan. So it's been very lifting.
Ed or Clara, can you add anything on communication? Has it helped communicate throughout the organization?
Clara, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. I can start. I think, I guess in a way I put the communication and the accountability piece hand in hand. One of the things that we worked on a lot at the beginning was kind of looking at roles and responsibility and who's really responsible for what, and then making sure that that gets communicated down throughout the entire company. And that really helped everybody get on the same page as to what their role was in where we were going and what they were accountable to getting done. So setting up, looking at the 6-year vision, the 3-year vision, and showing that to the staff, and then chunking that down into, okay, so if we want to do this in 6 years, what do we need to do today, this quarter, in order to get us there, right? And I think that's something that the staff all the way down really appreciated, because then it's not just sort of, an email gets sent out, okay, now we're doing this, or we want to do that. They understand where their piece fits into the whole. And, as you work through it, you get everyone aligned and going their same direction, and everyone's on the same page. It's really quite enjoyable, and everyone, they know the plan, and you can talk to them about the plan, and it makes everything a little bit easier to work through.
Very good. And, just to step back just a little bit, because I imagine the BOS system would have impact. We were talking before the Zoomcast a little bit about the supply chain issue. And we still have a number of companies that are going to be watching this that are still trying to get a handle around that supply chain. Could you share a little bit about sort of how you were impacted, and maybe how the BOS system was able to help you through your supply chain issue? I can start with you, Ed.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, again, maybe talk along a continuum of time. Our focus when COVID first hit was one of our customers, and ensuring that they received the goods that they needed. We were deemed an essential manufacturer by many of them. A good amount of our pressure-sensitive adhesives ended up in medical devices assembly and personal protective equipment. So we needed to be proactive, reaching out not only to our customers, but then also to our key supply partners. And early on, it was more or less us getting an assurance that we would have an uninterrupted supply during this time. And it was interesting, though, as we went through this past year, we had all the assurances and we had no interruptions in our supply until really, I'm going to say, this last calendar quarter. And so it was kind of the tail that wags. It's the tail that follows the dog. Now we find ourselves, quite frankly, the supply chains being constrained in a way that there's been force majeure because that we recently received because of constraints maybe on some inputs into our adhesive chemistries, to materials coming offshore, and competition for containers and congestion in the ports. So it's impacting us now more than ever. And once again, we find ourselves reaching back out to our customers and managing the constraints of the supply. But knock on wood, so far we've had no line downs or no inability to make shipments as a result of the constraints that we're experiencing. But I would say again, the fact that we went from one of reacting, but to maybe proactively touching not only our customers, but touching our suppliers with regular phone calls and regular communications, it's really helping us weather this in a very, very good way, in a very solid way, and so far satisfactory to our customers. So everybody's in a pinch right now. So.
Thank you, Ed. And yeah, I know it's amazing talking to Clara. You would think that the supply chain thing would have, worked its way out by now, but it hasn't. And Clara, do you have anything to add on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what we were talking about before the call started is it's almost like the pandemic is kind of having, waves, right? So you've got the first wave and you figure out how to handle that. And then now we're kind of coming into the second or even third wave of, now our sales are going up, but we're, worried a little bit about our supply chain. I will say though that again, one thing that was really helpful to me was that when we first started, so last year when we started the BOS system and we listed out the issues, one of the issues that we addressed that came up right away was that for some of our materials we only had a single source. And so we had been working on that. Our head of operations has been working on that all year as a major company goal, right? Because we identified it as a problem even before it really started to get constricted. So that's not to say that, you know, everyone's sleeping soundly at night right now, but we did have kind of a jump start on that. You know, as things have gotten tighter, we've got some alternatives to be looking at, and that has been reassuring for me because I know that it's been a really main focus. Again, like, you know, not to quote you all the time, Bob, but that laser focus on this issue has been there for our head of operations for a while, you know, and so he's come up with some good strategies, which is reassuring to see.
Very good. And Bob, maybe you could share with us a little bit about what you've seen in the industries through the pandemic and the tools that you've offered, and you know, share a little bit even how the BOS system has been implemented for, you know, for other things.
All right. So a little bit about the pandemic. We've seen a lot in 2020 of companies that were either really busy or really slow. We didn't see a lot of middle ground companies. So we kind of took a very soft approach of making sure people knew we were here to help them, but we weren't going to try and push them on anything because, you know, everybody was dealing with people out and rescheduling and changing schedules and stuff. So we were trying to be very empathetic of the situation. Uh, we we did do a couple things during that time frame. Is we developed this recovery diagnostic. Um, it's a no-cost diagnostic that we go into businesses and take a holistic look at the business. Um, we do it via a survey that the company decides who they want to do. Um, so they do this survey, then we generate a report, and then we have a discussion with the company. We've done 2 or 3 of those, which have been pretty powerful for companies to launch them into 2021. Along with that, the NIST MEP federal system is doing something on supplier scouting. So we're trying to help companies find suppliers, and we're also trying to match up companies who could be a supplier with companies. So we get probably half a dozen requests almost a week on companies throughout the U.S. looking for suppliers. So that's a big one. And then through this, a lot of companies have found that, you know, they have to relook at their business models. We've got companies saying, hey, we're going to have to change our business model. We might have to start looking for new markets. We might need new products or services. So, you know, we're letting them know that we've got a system for innovation, and we've helped several companies through innovation. But we've now added some new tools. We sent one of our guys via virtual out to University of Columbia and MIT, and we're adding what I'll call as advanced innovation, some really cool tools. But then we did deliver the BOS system to 3 companies, Necal being one of them. And we started off face to face. And then because of the pandemic, we converted and we kept several of those companies going virtually. So we changed how we delivered it. But through the system, we do deliver a lot of different tools. One's called the Talent Analyzer. They help you analyze your talent. How well do they fit your culture? Well, your culture is based on the values, so it gives them a way to test the values of their people. And then it asks 3 questions: do they get what they're supposed to do? Do they want to do it? And are they capable of doing it? And it's really been I think I've seen a lot of good progress with companies doing that. So for us, it was been a pretty good year. We're really looking forward to 2021. Things are taking off for us right now. things are starting to open up. We're looking very much forward to getting past this pandemic and going forward. So.
Thank you, Bob. And I know looking at the reports today, which is March 2nd, 2021, manufacturing is, climbing higher than it was 3 years ago. So things are booming a little bit in manufacturing. And so that brings us to, what do you see coming up next for Necal? Ed, I'll start with you.
Well, I hope that we've come out of fourth quarter 2020 in a strong footing. Even though we started the year with a loss in sales, we finished year over year on track. We've seen now, I think, 5 months of sales growth. And so we're really optimistic about our future. We're targeting some new markets as a result of the analysis we did of Necal in terms of the sandbox that we play in. And so we're entering some new markets and new customers, and we're knocking on doors, and we look for a bright 2021 and hopefully a continuation of that success. So.
Well, I enjoy your optimism. It feels good. And I think a lot of others out there, with what they've been through and to step back and just like we talked about, what we're doing right now is reflect on what we've been through and the optimism of going forward. Clara, do you want to share anything on Necal's future?
Sure. Yeah, I think maybe we kind of spoke to this at the beginning, but there are some trends that maybe were already kind of here a little bit before the pandemic, and that now they're being pushed on us even further. And I guess from my standpoint, I think that's good for Necal, because one of the things that we are now focusing on are things like having a bigger web presence, being a little bit more proactive even in putting out there what are we doing and how do we get a little bit more innovation and get to be known a little bit more in that way instead of maybe the more traditional trade show avenues that we were going before. And I think that's probably something that we were going to need to start doing and really focusing on no matter what. But the pandemic has really pushed us into a place where now there's no looking back on it. So I've been really excited to be part of that push. And I think, I agree with Ed. The future looks good. We're very excited to continue to work out, where do we need to put our efforts? Where do we need to focus now so that we can get to where we want to be in 6, 10, 15 years. So, yeah.
Well, good. Well, thank you so much, Clara and Ed. And as we wrap this up, I want to invite people to go ahead and in the chat, ask questions. We can even unmic you and you can ask it verbally, as well as we want to hear what other topics you would like to talk about in the future. And again, our partnership here is with Bob Oliver with UW-Stout Manufacturing Outreach Center. And so I encourage anyone out there to ask your questions right now. Try to stump Clara. It's almost impossible to do.
As we're getting into that, as Terry said, we'd also really like to hear from you on what other topics you'd like to hear. So a couple we're looking at supply chain. We're looking at do a session on supply chain. We're looking to do one on automation, probably do one on innovation. But we can come up with these ideas, but it's really about the audience and what you guys would like to hear more about. So if you can put something in the chat or unmic yourself and ask a question, please do so. And it looks like, Chris, you might have unmuted yourself. Did you have something, Chris Anderson?
Well, I have one here that I want to throw out because I know Amy Studden's on the line and with workforce development. And are you seeing shortages or difficulty in finding employees right now, Ed?
We're being a relatively small employer. We typically don't have difficulty finding employees, and the work that we've done this past year is, I'm going to say, renewing our values and with the promotions that Claire is talking about in terms of what we're doing with the website, what we're doing with the communications. We've recently have elevated our wages, and we're promoting ourselves in the community different than we've ever done before. And we're able to, so far, knock on wood, to attract the candidates that we need to find. So our growth is slow growth because we're not labor intensive, we're more capital intensive with what we do, but we're having success even in this difficult job market. I suspect it will get more difficult though as manufacturing heats up. So.
And Clara, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Ed. It is something that we talk about, though, when we look at certain positions, being in kind of a smaller town, and, you know, we kind of have our networks of people. We do spend some time discussing, well, in a couple of years, we might need this position or we might need this, and that I know can be challenging. It's not like you can just throw a resume, you know, throw a job posting out there and necessarily get the people that are interested in that position. But Ed really, like he said, he does a good job of networking and finding people.
Great. And, you know, and just looking sort of what you've been through and stuff, Bob, I think secession planning might be a good topic in the future too.
Yeah, no, we can definitely do something there. Right now, Amy's trying to send a question because her mic's not working, so hopefully she can send us a question.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. I know, Amy, I just sent somebody your way, made a recommendation. Right now, because of COVID and because of worker shortage in some places, we're seeing 2 businesses right now expand into Juneau County. And so it's not that they're starting up here. It's not that they're moving their business, but they decided to expand in different areas of the country.
Yeah, and she put in the chat box that she said thanks for sending them her way. She appreciated that. So.
Oh, you bet. And I know Clara and Ed Johnson, Mark Dennis is on the line too with the Wisconsin Procurement Institute.
Yes.
And Dave Olson has retired now, and Mark Dennis is going to be taking over. He's right on the other side of the wall from me. I keep him in our office here in Camp Douglas so we can keep him out of trouble. But he'll be calling you and getting a hold of you. Again, one last chance for any questions. And if Bob, you don't see any, we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, we do have one from Chris Hardy from Seven Rivers. He asked, is there more opportunity for taking advantage of business clusters as we look at the supply chain?
And Ed or Clara or you, Bob, do you want to, you guys can jump in on that.
Not sure what he means by business clusters. Chris, can you unmute yourself and tell us what you mean by business clusters?
Well, sure. So I look at Necal, obviously you have competitors out there, but are there other organizations in your general area that you can partner with on supply chain issues that arose last year that would be the benefit of everyone?
I think with regards to the items that we purchase, since we are coating pressure sensitive adhesives, and probably the 2 closest competitors we would have in our area is one down in Prairie du Chien being 3M Company, and then the other one would be over in maybe northern reaches of Juneau County over by Nakusa would be Nakusa Coated. And the types and kinds of products we create, probably they're different, but in some cases they're too specialized. So with pressure sensitive adhesives, one of the challenges we have is once we coat it to a liner, being able to get it to remove freely, and it's all about the chemistry. So because of the products we buy, it probably wouldn't be that suitable for us. Certainly, I can imagine in more broader categories of manufacturing, there's lots of things that can be consumed and that could be shared, but I'm not so sure it would work well for us. So,
And just to add on to that, sorry, Terry, just a little bit, I do think though, Chris, you point to sort of a bigger strategy that we have been examining with Necal, which is to really look at us as partners with, other USA manufacturers, right? That, we are all kind of trying to work together to make sure that, that we succeed. And I think that's been, a shift for us is to really start talking to other companies that might do similar things to what we do and look at them as potential collaborators instead of just competitors, especially for a company of our size. And there are others that are around us, our size are a little bit bigger, where when we work together, we can benefit both parties pretty well. So I think even if we can't leverage that specifically for certain items in our supply chain, it is something we can leverage for growth for manufacturing in our area of the country.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'll say a little bit more on that, Terry, is especially in the metal fab industry, we haven't seen them really collaborating on the supply chain itself. But where we do is they're sharing resources. It's really kind of cool that they finally got together and said, you know what? Why do we keep stealing each other's resources? Why don't, if you're really busy, we'll do some work for you and vice versa. So we're actually doing work for each other in the real busy times. Of course, the big problem right now is metal fab is one of those industries that's just extremely, extremely busy. So, if you don't mind, Terry, I'd like to add just a couple more things. One, for those that don't know this, the Department of Workforce Development created a Fast Forward Wisconsin grant funding a few years back, and they are open right now for applications for that. That's really to develop your workforce. So if you want to know any more about that, it's good to know that that's available to you. And we've done quite a bit of lean continuous improvement companies under those grants. We have one going right now. So don't be afraid to take care of it. Again, the deadline on that is April 8th. But just be aware it takes a little bit of time to put that application. So we always say get started sooner than later. So, and then I think we've also done some quality management system stuff under that. So don't be afraid to ask if you got questions. We're just here to help you. So.
Okay, again, as we wrap up, thank you, Clara, and thank you, Ed from Necal. Thank you, Bob Oliver from
Thank you, Terry.
UW-Stout. And again, if you didn't get a chance right now and you'd like to get any issues that you'd like us to talk on, get it to Juneau County at juneaucounty.com. And with that, thank you. And again, this is our very first post-COVID reflection on business, and we'll do another one next month. So goodbye, all.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.